All right, everyone, welcome to the Barzel Group free online webinar. Whether you're listening on YouTube or you're listening to a clip on social media, I hope that you're encouraged. I hope that you're challenged. Barzel is actually, as my phone rings, I need to put my phone on silent. How about that for an online webinar start? All right, sorry about that distraction. We all have distractions, right? So I just put do not disturb on, right? Whether you're listening online on YouTube or you're listening to social media on a clip, we hope that you're encouraged. We hope that you're inspired and sharpened. Barzel in the Hebrew comes from a proverb that says, iron sharpens iron. I need men and women to challenge me to get better. You need men and women to challenge you to get better, no matter where you are in the organization. I hope that you're encouraged and challenged by people above you, parallel to you inside the organization, and even the direct reports that you have. If you're leading people, I hope that you're challenged and inspired, and we need to sharpen one another. I get to be a coach in the Barzel Group, but guess what? I need a coach. Every leader needs a leader. Every coach needs a coach. Every mentor needs a mentor. In order for us to grow and to reach our maximum potential, this is absolute paramount. Again, at the Barzel Group, by way of introduction, we do four things. We do strategic planning in organizations in both businesses and in nonprofits. The second thing we do is we do a life plan, which is a 2-day deep dive intensive to help men and women gain clarity on where they are in their life. We look at all the domains of their personal world, family world, vocational world, and their community. The third thing we do is coaching. We do a tremendous amount of leadership coaching, which is why you see business and leadership guides, specifically executive coaching, really dialing in everything we can to help everyone that's leading a team, leading an organization, reach their maximum potential. And the final thing that we do is called the leadership circle. We provide leadership development dynamics for groups. We provide leadership development. We'll come in and lead in organizations just like yours. We'll create an online format where we challenge and equip the room to get better in their leadership. So, in a sense, you can outsource leadership development to our organization. Okay, I'm really excited to bring you this topic. Even though it's a hard topic to discuss, I'm excited to bring it to you because we all got it. It's blind spots. And you'll see by in the introduction the four blind spots that every leader needs to know. Now, the challenge that I had was actually coming up with four. Could have been five, could have been six, could have been 10 or 20 because we all have them. And I know, just to state up front, the irony of blind spots is that how are we supposed to know them if we're actually blind to them? Well, we can study. We can study what other people have said about blind spots. We can study our own past blind spots, and we can learn from other people. When I today even tell you part of my story, there are things that other people saw that I didn't see. And the reality is, in your life right now, today, there are things that the people in your proximity see about you that you don't see because they have a different perspective. And a good leader will always study their blind spots and do something about it. So the challenge that I have was just choosing four, but I'm going to dive right in today and share with you the four blind spots that every leader needs to know. All right, I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm really excited to dive into this topic with you because we all need it. Okay, so check this out. All right, continue to share. Check this out. Hopefully, you can see that the Barzel Group Business and Leadership Guide. There is our topic, and the action here is how to open up your eyes. How do we do that? Yes, okay. If I recognize that's a potential blind spot or a blind spot, what do I do about it? How do I open up my eyes? Today, I want to share with you four blind spots and action steps to take. Now, your challenge, remember my challenge was to choose four. Your challenge is to do a deep dive introspection to see if this is the case with you. I can go ahead and tell you the answer. It is. Because you're human, you're guilty. Because you are limited in your capacity, no matter how high capacity you are, it doesn't even matter. You are guilty of these things because you are not perfect. You're guilty. In fact, if you're listening to this, I know that you're even open to hearing from this because a lot of people that aren't willing to deal with their blind spots wouldn't even listen to this because they might assume what? They don't have any blind spots. So be open, do the introspective work. And as I'll say at the very end, I'm going to say here at the very beginning, yeah, you need other people to help you. Why? Because you're blind to it. So you're not going to see the things that other people see. So we need others' help to understand what our blind spots is. Because I've just chosen four, but I don't know what your blind spots are. The four blind spots every leader needs to know. Let's jump into number one. There are things they want to say, but are unwilling to do so. Think about this with me. Do you recognize this? Maybe on a multiple choice, you would say, yeah, I know. But there's always things in the room, and they is a direct report or an assistant or a team member, a coworker, or if you're leading a team. If you're the CEO, I guarantee you right now, there are people in the organization that have something to say, but they're unwilling to do so. Losing sight of that brings great danger. Now, I don't want to put all this weight on your shoulder. I'm not saying that they're unwilling to say it only because of you or they're afraid of your reaction. It could something just be totally on them. Maybe they're insecure. Maybe they're fearful of being wrong. Maybe they're fearful of being misunderstood. It might not be on your shoulder, but when leaders lead without the awareness that other people have something to say and they're just not saying it, it's so dangerous. Now, it could be on you. It could be that you have a tendency to react in a way that does not create a safe environment. You might not be willing to say it. You might not be willing to agree. But the reality is there are bad environments, unhealthy teams, unhealthy cultures. If you ask for the room's opinion and no one ever says anything, oh man, I got a warning for you. It's an unhealthy room. So walk into every room knowing that there are people in the room that have something to say, but they're unwilling to say it. All right, so what do we do about that? If that's true, and I know that's true of me too, I know that there have been people that have been fearful to let me know something, and there's a reason why. So there's two issues. What do they want to say? And number two, why do they not want to say it? We're going to pay attention to that. What is it that they really want to say? Number one. And number two, why is it that they're unwilling to say it? We got some homework to do as leaders. So what do we do? Here are some quick steps to take. This is so obvious, but man, sometimes common sense is not so obvious. Church Cathy says that, right? That's the founder of Chick-fil-A. Wish common sense was more common. It's not obvious. It's not obviously so obvious. So here are three steps that you can take. I know this feels obvious, but listen to this. Ask corporately and privately who sees this differently. Have you ever cast a big vision or shared a big idea or given a direction and literally said to the room, hey, I know that we're not always going to be on the same page. You're bringing voice to the difference. You're giving permission to the room to see it different. So you say something like this, hey, I know that not all going to see this the same way. And I know from the seat that you sit, you're feeling different things or you see it differently. Who sees this differently? Speak to it. And I just want you to know that no matter what you say, I'm going to receive it and listen well. We can have different perspectives, but who sees this differently? Is there a different angle in the room? Is there someone that, even though you like the idea, you're really concerned that we move forward? All I'm doing is bringing voice to the reality in the room that other people see it differently. You know, other people see it differently. And you know, sometimes it's not the tactical and practical, it could just be the emotional side. They're fearful. They're fearful of trying something new. They're fearful of failure. So you can just ask the room who sees this differently. Now, the corporate side is different because I imagine myself facilitating a room and there's eight people in the room. And I say, hey guys, I want to go around the room and say, are you thumbs up? Are you thumbs middle? Or are you thumbs down? I've done this exercise before and it's awesome. And someone's like this, oh, I'm not thumbs up, but I'm sort of like almost maybe at 9:30, 10 o'clock. I'm not a complete thumb. Okay, well, what's your obstacle? What are you concerned about? What do you worry about? So powerful to do that. What about private? That's when you pull Jay aside. I use Jay because he's my business partner, and you say, "Hey, Jay, I know that you see things differently. How so today? Look, tell me about the meeting. Maybe you didn't speak up in the meeting, but tell me how you see it. How do you see it? Oh, and all you're doing is saying, "Give me your opinion." A great leader understands the way their people think, and a great leader understands the way their people see. If you do this, you're going to be best positioned to effectively lead. Number two, build a culture where disagreements are healthy. Don't shame. You don't have to disagree with their disagreement, but you build a culture where disagreements are healthy. You say what I said earlier, and that's part of the Barzel Group, where you're able to say, listen, we sharpen one another when we voice our different perspectives. We sharpen one another when we see it differently, we speak to it and we honor one another. That's building a culture. If you're not very good at this, maybe someone in the room is. To facilitate a conversation and say, we are better when we disagree in a healthy way. Say it out loud and then live it out loud. Number one, number two is not possible at all unless you leave your ego at the door. This is healthy, but this is hard. It is so hard to cast a big vision and have the first two or three people that speak up disagree with you or express doubt or fear or concern. We, instead of listening to their concern, our ego is at stake and we feel insecure. We feel worried, or maybe there's a personal vendetta, something that you're feeling between you and another team member or staff member. Leave your ego at the door and believe that the people in your organization want what's best for the organization. If you make it about you, your ego loses. If you make it about the organization wins. Blind spot number two. Totally different, but listen to this. You think you value their input, but they don't think so. Think about that with me. You think you value their input. Now, I stated this when I was building this brief online webinar. I started thinking about this. This is almost like make sure you validate. That's what every leader should do. But the blind spot is when the leader thinks that they value input and they value the input and they validate it, but the person that's sharing, they actually don't think so. Why is that? Why is that? You might think, I really do value the input of my organization. I can't remember the number, but it was a painstakingly high number when there was research done to leaders asking them, do they believe they value the input of the people that they lead? It was a high number. It wasn't 52%, okay, but it was more like 80, 85, 87% of this study that most leaders are going to say, of course, I value the input of others. Man, you're going to have to find a maniacal, egotistical, egocentric leader to say, I do not value the input of the people that I lead. No, very few people say that. But when you ask the organization the question, the numbers flip. The majority of people in the organization says the person at the top does not value what I have to say. How do you flip that assumption on its head? If you believe that you value their input, but they don't believe it, there is a disconnect. So the question is, what do we do about this? Again, obvious? Not so obvious. Because if it were obvious, we would do it more willingly. Three quick things. Don't ask questions unless you're willing to listen to answers. Don't ask questions unless you're willing to listen to answers. Now, this is tricky. This comes from a very personal story that I have to leave names and situations and organizations off, but I worked for a leader a long time ago, alongside a leader a long time ago that would often ask questions and almost never listen to the responses. He genuinely wanted to ask the question because he wanted to know what everyone thought, but he actually never validated their opinion because everyone knew that he was going to do what he wanted to do. So the danger eventually over time became even though there was love, there was respect, there was a good relationship, there was a good teamwork, and I believe there was a very good and healthy dynamic in the room. Even though that was the case, I could tell the room, this was a long time ago, I could tell the room stopped being honest about what they really thought because they knew that nothing was going to change. And so what did you naturally create? A yes, sir culture. Sounds good to me. So if someone says something, yep, that sounds good. Instead, what happened was at the time, Questions would always be asked to the room. And it used to be like, well, here's how I see it. Well, why do you see it that way? It almost became, I'm going to disagree with what you have to say, not really listen. So don't ask the question unless you really are okay with people disagreeing. Number two, validate every single response. Every single response. Even if in the middle of the response you're going, no way, Jose, I don't see it that way. There's no way we're going to do that. You can still say, hey, just to use Jay's name again, Jay, thank you for sharing. It takes courage to speak up and say things differently, and I appreciate that. I really appreciate that you see it that way. I really do, and it sharpens the way we all feel and see it. Just validate the response. Show your affirmation through action and not just talk. If you never shift your gears because of what people say in the room, they're going to stop saying anything in the room. So if you say that you're going to affirm, change action. If three out of the four people in the room say, I think we're moving too fast, guess what you can do as a good leader? Hey, let's slow down this process. I hear you. I do not want to cause increased anxiety, so we're going to slow it down. What I'm hearing you say is that this is a lot right now for us to try to accomplish, so we're going to slow down. If you never change your action, then it just becomes talk. Your questions become meaningless and their answers become meaningless as well. So don't ask the question unless you're willing to listen. Validate every single response and then show affirmation through action. Change something. Do something different because of what you've learned and heard. Even if you have to remember, put your ego aside. Remember number three here, leave your ego at the door. Even if you have to slow down when you don't like slowing down, slow it down for the sake of your people. Blind spot number three, their agreement does not mean they actually agree. Think about this like juxtaposition or this paradoxical statement, this contrast. Their agreement does not mean they actually agree. Have you ever asked a room something really short and simple? Hey, does that sound good? And everyone's like nodding. Yep, yep, yep. It, what you didn't ask for is a different perspective. What you didn't ask for is for them to raise their anxiety or concern. What you did not ask for was how they think we're going to be successful or what they're most concerned about. You just wanted a thumbs up, so they gave you a quick thumbs up. The blind spot is that when you hear no problems, no one sees any problem. That's not true. And you're going to hit yourself. You're just going to run into a brick wall. You're going to slap yourself in the face. Just because there is quote unquote agreement doesn't mean that they actually agree. I think it's healthy, and I know you can feel like a little cynical if you walk into every room. This is going to touch on blind spot number four just a little bit. But I think you got to be a little bit cynical, and you have to actually assume that the room doesn't agree with you. If you assume that the room does not agree, you're going to cast vision. You're going to overcome doubts and fears. You're going to speak to, hey guys, I know that this project feels rushed, but let me tell you why we have to do it now. And you raise a sense of urgency and you invite them to join you in that urgency. If you just assume that they're going to align with you and that they agree with you, it's you're going to move forward blind because no room fully ever agrees with every single decision ever. So don't be blind to that. We have to not assume, and I'm doing this right now. I think there's a lot of energy and synergy in the team that I lead. I think there's excitement, there's optimism, but also there's a little bit of me, even though I'm not trying to lead in a jaded way or cynical way, but just the reality of I know that some people don't understand. And I don't want to assume that because everyone's like, yeah, we're excited, that they don't have concerns. It's my job to find out their concerns. It's my job to find out where there's disunity. It's my job as a leader to find out the areas where they see it differently and potentially disagree. So, what do we do about this? Here it is. Always assume people in the room disagree. Always assume it. Because when you agree, when you think that they agree, you don't look for the disagreement, but you always have to assume that the people in the room see it differently. This is touching a little bit on blind spot number one, but that's a different assumption. So if you walk into the room and assume that they disagree, your mission is to find out where they do disagree, just so that you understand. You're going to be able to please everyone? No. Are you going to be able to take everyone's action steps the way they want to take their action steps? Absolutely not. But you're not going to lead blind. You're going to be leading with awareness. I don't, I've never done this because I think this would be a pointless question to the room. But if we were to do a multiple choice question with 1,000 leaders and says, do you want to lead with awareness or do you want to lead with assumption? No one, no one would say they want to lead with assumption. No one. They want to lead with awareness. So here's the message, leaders. Stop leading from assumptions. Find out the naysayers, find out what they're saying, not so that you can just publicly disagree or shame them or guilt them into thinking something differently, but to just understand them and then do something about it. So be a little paranoid. I think you should increase your paranoia, not in many areas around leadership, because I think you should lead with confidence, not paranoia. But I think you should lead with a little bit of paranoia, because you got to understand that not everyone sees it the way you see it. Not everyone feels the way that you feel. And not everyone agrees with you, even if they're smiling and giving you a thumbs up. Even if you went around the room and said, hey, tell me, give me a thumbs up rating. Thumbs down, thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs, where? If everyone goes this, thumbs up, be careful. Be careful because after the meeting, they're going to keep thinking about it and then they're going to get worried about something. You got to pay attention, and you always have to assume that the room sees it differently. Okay. Blind spot, finally, number four. Think about this. You don't actually know how hard they work, and you don't recognize how hard they work. Let me read it again. You don't actually know and recognize how hard they work. If I went up to 10 bosses right now, CEOs, owner operators, you name it, team leaders, whatever seat you sit in, and I said, hey, do you think your team works hard? Every now and then, if it's a bad, unhealthy culture or there's disgruntled employees, no, I don't think they work very hard. Most people are going to say, man, yeah, my team works hard, man. They do, they do, they do, they do. Most leaders would recognize that they have people that are working hard. And so they know it and they recognize it. But if you flip that number on the percentage again, I'm not going to make up some percentage, but I just know by my work with organizations, when I ask, hey, listen, how hard's your team working? Oh man, they're busting it. And then I go to the employee and say, hey, just tell me a sense of culture right now. Does your direct report know how hard you work? And do they recognize you for that work? Almost always the answer is no. Well, they do understand a little bit, but I don't think they. And even though I think they know how hard I work, I'm not really recognized for that hard work. The vast majority of the time, there's some form of an answer that sounds like this: no. But the assumption on the leader is that, man, I know how hard they work. Well, do you recognize how hard they work? I'm telling you, it is a blind spot to think the leaders of the organization and the company understand and know and recognize how hard their people are getting after it. But yet the employees of the organization never have that same feeling. They never do. They almost never have the same feeling. So don't be blind and bring the assumption that your people know and recognize, or that you recognize how hard they work. So what do we do about this? Do your homework to understand what your team is actually doing and to know how hard they work. Do your homework. What if you sat in a meeting that you never sat in, but that you typically don't sit in? You walk into that meeting just to understand what they're doing, and you say, guys, this is incredible. I had no idea. And you bring voice to it. I had no idea that you guys were diving into these details. This is incredible. And I just want to thank you for what you're doing. So do your homework to understand. It's like oh, I'm sorry, I'm going blank on his name, the CEO of Southwest Airlines that will show up just to grab bags and put them on the planes, or he'll show up to behind the ticket counter to really just meet people, shake their hands, give them hugs, and recognize how hard they work. There is a culture in Southwest Airlines that our CEO, our owner, believes in us. He loves us, and he might just show up today because that's what he likes to do. That's rare. But here's the message is if you're leading a team, you got to actually do your homework to understand really what they're doing and find a way to recognize them. That's number two. Find creative ways to not only recognize their work, but to honor their work. You don't just say, "Hey, I see what you're doing," but how do you lift them up? How do you honor them? To honor someone is to lift them up above you. It is to put, it's this idea that you take second place and you put them in first place. You sit the bench and you lift and honor their work up. And so, how do you do that? How do you find and recognize what they're doing, celebrate what they're doing, and then recognize it by honor them? And then number three, join them in actually doing the work. Imagine walking into a room that you're not normally in your team or your organization. And you say this question: how can I help? Four questions that I believe would radically transform and change your leadership inside your organization. And you not only then encourage them, but you take a part of the work and you help them get that ball across the finish line. You join them in work. Can't imagine it's like a football coach getting on the line of scrimmage and hitting somebody, right? Rather than sitting on the golf cart blowing the whistle. There's a different world. I don't know why I pictured a coach sitting on the sideline, blowing the whistle and yelling versus getting down dirty in the mud and making a tackle. I don't recommend that without some football pads, but you just go with the illustration for a moment. There's a difference in the conductor conducting and telling people what to do versus grabbing the instrument and playing alongside. There's a difference. Look at these blind spots again as I work back through these blind spots. I just want to read them again. This is the challenge that all of us have to lead and lead well. There are things that people want to say, but they're not willing to do it. It's your job to find out what they really think and feel. You think you value people's input, but they don't think so. Find out why. Find out why. And just because they're giving you the thumbs up doesn't actually mean that they agree. Find out why. Like how the message of each of this is find out why. Do some homework. Becoming Overcoming blind spots takes some work on your part. Blind spot number four, you don't actually know and recognize how hard they work. You might think you do, but maybe you don't. So do your homework. As I've mentioned in the past, really quickly, the Barzel Business and Leadership Guides, we come alongside organizations to help them plan for their future. Here's a really quick view of our 6 phase process. We help organizations gain a new perspective. We help organizations plan for their future. We help organizations take the right action. We help organizations think through how they're structured and how they're designed. How do you reorganize to optimize the performance of the organization? And we come alongside to help them manage their process and ultimately help them renew to make change in order for them to reach their vision. Study your blind spots. Remember, great leaders need to see what their followers see because you see one thing, your followers see something different. And if you want to be a great leader, you got to see what they see, know what they know, and feel what they feel. If we can do anything to help you, we would love to. Visit us at barzelgroup.com. Here's my email, jason at barzelgroup.com, and my cell phone. There's a QR code. If you're watching online and you want to scan that QR code and get in touch with us, we would absolutely love to get in touch with you. Remember, do not be discouraged by blind spots because you got them. So do I. Just do the homework of trying to figure out what your blind spots are and ultimately how you can overcome them. Blessings to you. Have a good day. And if you can think of any way that we can help you, we would love to do just that.